and thank you for tuning into part 2 of our Homeownership in America, Prioritizing Attainability in 2021 event series. My name is Josh Resnik, and I'm CQ Roll Call's publisher, as well as Chief Content Officer for our parent company, FiscalNote. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the Manufactured Housing Institute, for making this event series possible. I'm joined today by their CEO, Leslie Gooch. Leslie, good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Josh, and welcome back, everyone, to part 2 of our virtual series about attainable homeownership in America. As Josh mentioned, I'm Leslie Gooch, the CEO of the Manufactured Housing Institute. MHI is the only national trade association that represents all segments of the factory-built housing industry. During part 1 of our series, you heard the broader conversation about affordable housing and issues of federal assistance that are often brought up when affordable housing is discussed. Today, we want to go beyond government assistance programs for rental housing and focus on homeownership. With the President and Congress seeking to expand the American dream of homeownership and promote fair housing opportunities for all, now is the time to reshape the affordable housing conversation and talk about producing housing that people can afford. We call this attainable housing, and manufactured housing can help address our supply challenges by providing more attainable homeownership opportunities. Unlike site-built homes, which are subject to different state and local regulations, manufactured homes are built to one uniform federal code, the Manufactured Housing Construction and Safety Standards Act of 1974. We call that the HUD code. This federal code ensures that all homes are built to safe, quality, sustainable building materials. Manufactured housing offers value to consumers because of technological advancements and cost savings that are associated with the factory-built process, and because of the efficiencies that come with our federal building code. We are the main source of unsubsidized attainable housing in the United States. We are a critical homeownership option, commonly more affordable than rental housing, and manufactured housing currently serves 22 million families. As the nation continues to navigate a wide-scale housing shortage exacerbated by the coronavirus crisis, rising construction costs, labor shortages, and growing student debt, the demand for increasing the attainable housing supply in this country has never been greater. I want to thank Representative Rice for joining this important discussion, and I look forward to hearing how the public and private sectors can work together to bridge the gap between housing supply and demand and provide a path forward for the next generation of homebuyers. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Leslie. Kicking off part 2 of our series is Congresswoman Kathleen Rice, who represents New York's 4th Congressional District, which encompasses the majority of Nassau County, a diverse suburban community located on Long Island. Hello, Congresswoman. We're thrilled you could join us today for this important discussion.
Thank you for having me, Josh.
Let's dive in. Our nation faces a serious affordable housing shortage, which has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 health crisis. We know that this administration and Congress, just like previous ones, has made it a priority to address this shortage of quality, affordable housing. And it's an area that seems to always have bipartisan support. Can you share with us some of the actions that are being discussed in Congress to address this issue?
The serious lack of affordable housing in our country has been a persistent problem. And COVID-19, the pandemic, really has only exacerbated this national crisis. It is an area that has previously had bipartisan support in Congress. And I think this is because the affordable housing crisis affects all of our districts in some way, whether we represent urban, suburban, or rural communities. Addressing this national housing crisis must include actions to increase both the availability and accessibility of affordable housing for more Americans. First, we need to increase the supply of affordable housing, which will require significant investments in housing development. This must include working with the private sector and exploring public-private partnerships to ensure housing can be built and maintained at prices that families can afford. Next, it's imperative that we work with state and local governments to comprehensively address the affordable housing crisis. Actions at the federal level should include incentives for state or local governments to help promote the development of more affordable housing. Restrictive local zoning has been a significant barrier to addressing affordable housing needs in many communities. In Congress, we can consider incentives or requirements for local governments to eliminate restrictive zoning policies. This could be done by tying changes to local zoning to federal funding related to infrastructure, transportation, or housing. We also have to address equity issues that have served as barriers to affordable housing for minority and underserved communities. In early March of 2020, right before the COVID-19 national emergency was declared, I attended a field hearing held by the Financial Services Committee on modern day redlining and its impact on underbanked and excluded communities in New York. That hearing examined continued patterns of discrimination in banking services and mortgage lending for residents of low to moderate income communities and communities of color. Addressing barriers to access to credit and homeownership for underserved communities must also be included as part of the discussion in Congress. So while increasing the supply and availability of affordable housing should continue to be a top priority, I believe the conversation around access to affordable housing must also include a discussion about housing discrimination as well. At the federal level, actions that would provide incentives for state and local governments to affirmatively address fair housing issues is another step we could take going forward.
Thank you. Now, longer term, homeownership is a critical driver of economic mobility for families and entire communities. Prior to the COVID-19 health crisis, barriers to homeownership were already impacted by rising construction costs, labor shortages, and growing student loan debt. What steps can the administration and Congress take to address these issues so that Americans can achieve the dream of homeownership?
This is a very important question because the easy answer is that we just need to dig out from the pandemic and rebuild our economy. But the real reason we are in such a dire housing situation now is because we were already in a historic affordable housing crisis even before the pandemic hit. The student loan debt crisis has a significant impact on barriers to home ownership, and it is an area I am particularly focused on. Far too many recent graduates laugh when you ask them if they're thinking about buying a home. The prospect seems completely outlandish and entirely out of reach. And it's sad, and we have to finally address this issue. Currently, federal student loan borrowers remain in an interest-free payment pause that began on March 13th of 2020, and that extends through the end of September. And we did make some further progress on student loan relief in the American Rescue Plan. Previously, under federal student loan forgiveness programs, the amount forgiven is reported to the IRS as income and taxed according to the borrower's current tax bracket. So even if a borrower's debt is forgiven, the IRS hits them with a big tax bill at the end of the year. The provision in the American Rescue Plan won't count any student debt forgiven from December 31st of 2020 to January 1st of 2026 as income. This is real relief in and of itself, and it could clear the way for further student loan forgiveness down the line without student borrowers having to pay thousands of dollars in unexpected taxes. I also have a bill with Representative Steve Stivers of Ohio, who I believe you're going to be talking to as well, that would amend the Internal Revenue Code to effectively remove the $2,500 cap on deductions for student loan interest. That means that borrowers would be able to deduct all of their interest for student loan amounts up to $750,000, which is the same loan threshold as mortgage interest deductions. The bill would also eliminate the income limits on student loan interest deductions, allowing individuals who are earning more than $85,000 annually which would be about $170,000 for couples filing jointly, to take these deductions on their taxes and end the phase out for individuals earning more than $70,000 or $140,000 per couples. This is a bipartisan common sense proposal that will alleviate the student loan burden on recent graduates and their families.
The term affordable housing has become synonymous with taxpayer subsidized housing, thereby cloaking costly government assistance in a wrap of feel good. In your opinion, how can providers of quality, unsubsidized housing, such as manufactured housing, work with Congress to ensure it's included in conversations about serving the affordable housing needs of the nation?
It's a great question. In 2019, I was able to tour manufactured homes when they were on display on the National Mall as part of HUD's Innovative Housing Showcase. I was blown away by the quality and aesthetic of today's homes. So I think raising awareness and making an effort to dispel any pre-existing stigma about manufactured homes is a really good place to start. Furthermore, developing and increasing availability of affordable housing should be included in the conversation about improving and modernizing the infrastructure system in our country. And promoting access to manufactured housing as a form of affordable housing should absolutely be a part of the discussion as we consider any infrastructure plan going forward.
Manufactured housing is the only naturally occurring housing in America. There are no federal subsidies and no cost to taxpayers for these homes, which provide quality housing for those who, on average, make $40,000 a year. But what can the government do to help borrowers access this affordable housing?
So I believe we need more financing for manufactured homes. Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae need to use their duty to serve mission to increase lending for both manufactured home and chattel loans. Additionally, the FHA, the Federal Housing Authority, should increase the loan limits for Title I loans as required by statute, which, by the way, it has not done since 2009. Yet in that time, construction costs have increased more than 30%. Which has created a tremendous burden for manufacturers. The FHA also needs to update the Title II regulations to allow for cross-mod homes, which are indistinguishable from site-built homes. You cannot tell the difference when they are in a neighborhood side by side.
Federal regulations, as well as state and local zoning and planning ordinances, can significantly impact the availability of affordable housing. What steps can be taken to ensure that states and localities are not discriminating against affordable homeownership options, such as manufactured housing?
There is no question that manufactured homes serve many housing needs in a wide range of communities, from rural areas where housing alternatives are few and construction labor is scarce or prohibitively expensive, to higher cost metropolitan areas as in infill applications. However, zoning and land planning ordinances have a profound impact on housing patterns. For example, restrictive local ordinances, which can include limitations or outright prohibitions against manufactured homes, are discriminatory barriers against affordable housing. Across the country, there are countless examples of state and local zoning, planning, and development restrictions that either severely limit or outright prohibit the placement of a manufactured home. Median home prices in my district, the median home price in my district is well over $500,000. The cost of a manufactured home without land in my state is $72,900. And yet there are only 280 manufactured homes in my district. We need to remove barriers to manufactured housing, and the HUD code plays a really big role in that. So delays in HUD code updates negatively impacts consumer choice and cost. The delays place an inordinate burden on manufacturers, which forces them to navigate an outdated regulatory landscape to simply provide consumers with the latest innovations, the latest technology, and the features that they demand. In January, HUD published the first comprehensive updates to the HUD code in nearly a decade. However, there are still several subsequent updates to the HUD code that have been approved by the Manufactured Housing Consensus Committee, but are still pending HUD action. These updates to the HUD code could prevent state and local zoning boards from implementing discriminatory ordinances, and they should be implemented.
Well, thank you. This was very informative. And on behalf of CQ Roll Call and the Manufactured Housing Institute, I want to thank you, Congresswoman Rice, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Josh.
Thanks to everyone who tuned in. Be sure to follow @Roll Call for part 3 of this event series. Have a great day.